and everything like that. Not that that's the first place we want and everything like that. But I just want to, is there a program that you looked at it, bringing it to other parts of the world?
So the answer is yes, only because the program is really, starting with respect and building trust with individual people. And, I don't think about but there are some countries that are very progressive and are doing some amazing work, and it's very different than the United States. And there are other countries that are totally struggling and are much harsher conditions and don't offer lots of options to people inside prisons. So, I mean, it runs the gamut across the world.
Put myself back there and everything. Yeah, definitely runs the gamut and all in that space and everything like that. Just tell us a little bit about how the program works and how you are doing it. Like I said, I did read a little bit on your bio about how you go about getting these people into mentorships and things along those lines. But for those that are listening from around the world, like Dr. Sharif, and even one of our founders of the network, Nick, who has joined us, and Nick is a attorney, but he doesn't do any criminal law. He does mostly pension and everything like that. At least I don't think you've ever done any criminal law. Have you ever done any criminal law, Nick? I don't think you have.
Only one case. It was a tax evasion case, but I don't know if you'd call it criminal law. We entered into a settlement agreement as the person was, how you say, not reporting income from Swiss banks. Okay, which by the way is a crime. You're not supposed to do stuff like that. But I wouldn't call it hardcore criminal law. That's a whole different cat. But technically, it's actually a crime for what it's worth.
That makes sense.
I tend to stay away from criminal laws and criminals. It's not my thing I want to spend a lot of time with. That's for other people.
I understand that. And, Mr. Nugent, you mentioned earlier this obsession, and Rick has mentioned it before as well and everything like that. But how do you think this obsession with true crime is hurting us? Because like I said, I'm here in Durham, North Carolina. We had a very famous true crime case, that of Michael Peterson and everything like that. And of course, there have been other cases that have been here, just like there have been cases in Colorado, and everybody's following what's going on with, and hopefully she will be returned at some point or another. The Savannah Guthrie and all in that space and all in that kind of way. But I just wonder how do you think that these kind of like true crime things are impacted? Because you are right, you can turn on the TV and whether it's fictional shows like Law and Order or whether it's the true crime, it just seems like crime dominates what's going on our television and social media.
Well, I guess the easier answer is, an instant gratification society. So it's suspenseful, keeps you engaged for a short period of time, and then if it's out of sight, out of mind, you don't think of it anymore. But those people, when they are convicted and then they're processed and they go on to prison, nobody's thinking about the residual damage, which is not just them, it's their family, it's their neighbors, it's their community, and it's extended family as well. So it wasn't just that one person. And then people, I think, also don't know what happens inside prisons. They're all different, just like any organization. It's only as good as the warden who's leading that particular facility. And, what is happening once the gate closes? The one thing I will say when you are watching TV that is true is that when you come through the gate, and I mean inside, not just the exterior gate, but when you hear that gate hit, there is no other sound like that. And if you know in that moment that life is over for you the way you have known it, and things are changing, and even some of the bravest men, that moment they've often shared with me that is the thing where they went, oh my gosh, this is it. And everything changes for them, not necessarily in a good way. I mean, they are really concerned about their own safety in that moment. That's something. The other thing that I think that people don't think about much is the fact that it's so noisy, it's so loud, the lighting is just difficult. There's a better word somewhere, but it's a lot. Just the environment itself, even if everything was great, that's a lot all into itself. But again, one of the things that I think is important is programming. You're programming, bringing things inside the prison, in the facility, so that they can learn and do better than they already are. Because the talent inside the prison is unbelievable. I don't think people can realize, how many brilliant minds are there, and they want to do better. Like I said, not everybody does. So let me be clear about that. Is not 100%. But you probably have, easy 30 plus 35% who absolutely see something they want different for themselves. And they see actually prison as the opportunity to be able to begin to rebuild themselves.
Well, that brings up a couple of questions. I was just curious about your thoughts about having done that work and everything. Because a lot of times when you watch shows, and I'm gonna name a show that was old and everything like that, but you watch shows like Oz, there's definitely a prison culture and there's definitely prison society. Like there's different organizations that are within the prison, and sometimes you have to maneuver that as well because there are different organizations. It might be the Latin Kings, it might be the Bloods and the Crips, it might even be some of the skinheads and stuff like that. So I was just wondering, even when you're in these organizations, how do you get them to get past their own personal differences and everything like that? And the other thing that I know sometimes people think about prison is that it becomes prison you, which means that they learn how to become better criminals and everything like that. So I was just wondering your thoughts on both of that, because those are things that I've heard people talk about is how it can become prison you because you learn tricks of the trade, for lack of a better term. But then you've also got to deal with those different kinds of groups. And of course, there's always the concern about abuse in the prison, whether that's from the guards or whether that's from fellow prisoners, because that's something that we oftentimes hear about, whether it's in the media hype or whether it's in real life. But there is a fear of being abused within the prison.
Everything you said is accurate. Let's say that. So, but let's go back to, I think the first thing is that this is why programming is important. Otherwise, it does become prison use. You can learn more negative ways to be able to hurt people or do something or commit another crime. However, having said that, I think the thing that's important is I actually had the privilege, and I do mean privilege, of attending Kairos weekend. And Kairos is a religious organization that goes into prisons. It's a 3.5-day program. Kairos Inside is for men, and I was able to sit through that. And they had a lot of men, you say affiliation, but you can say gang, you can say organization, that were involved in that. And I had the opportunity to interview them after the weekend. And what I will say is that throughout that weekend, what happened is they put aside their differences and they saw something else. They saw the humanity in one another rather than arguing for their organization or something else. And one of the things that I know I feel strongly about now, your audience may feel differently, but I think that real transformation can happen when they see something for themselves that's higher than themselves. What I mean by that is it could be some kind of religious transformation. It could be God, it could be a faith-based class, it could be the Bible, it could be Allah, it could be anything where they see that relying on themselves exclusively is not going to bring them the change they want. That's point one. Then you can do amazing things inside prison.
Maybe we can hear from Dr. Sharif and see what the situation is over in Bangladesh. I sort of know what goes on in the United States because you have a huge prison population, but Bangladesh has a very large population, 170 plus million people in a very small contained area. I'm wondering, Dr. Sharif, do you have any experience with the prison population in Bangladesh?
Yeah, thank you. This is actually very interesting discussions, and I'm observing our today's guest background and everything. It's very interesting because she focuses on innovation leadership. So this is also a very interesting topic for me because I do focus on talent economy. So if you want to understand this Bangladesh and Bangladesh market, actually we speak in one language. It's called Bengali, and there is around 280 to 300 million people around the world. Those who speak in the same language, Bengali. In East Bengal and West Bengal, like in India and Bangladesh. So in that particular area, actually around 57% to 60% actually youth, those who are under 30 years old. And definitely they are a very good audience for Pop TV and all of the things. So 3 aspects I just want to share with you. Number 1, understanding these cultures, different cultures, and engagement with this culture, which is very important for the leadership. What we see in this Russia and Ukraine war, what we see this USA and Iran war, actually the big countries, the small economy, diversified issues very well. So that's why my World Talent Economic Forums, with the collaborations of definitely USA has lot of good people, lot of expert people, with Tando, as well as Japan. Japan is another good area of leadership development. So these UN universities, we working together and we are taking initiative for a climate leadership program. Because if you see this Bangladesh, if you see India or Maldives or Nepal, these kind of countries, we are heavily affected by the climate change. Number two, our energies and other things heavily dependent on 90% dependent on Middle East markets. And number three, we have lot of youth populations. So I believe and I write a book. It's called Silk Route 3.0. This Himalaya area, this Ganga, Podda, and Bay of Bengal. We have around 600 million people, like 1/10 of the global population in this area. So if this global north, like where are you from, and global south, where I am from, if we work together, it's $1 trillion economy. It's a new, it's a new culture, it's a new populations, and it needs a lot of good things. So we do not need to focus on war. We do not need to focus on conflict. We do not have to focus, invest on all of the wrong things. We can invest on humanity, we can invest on technology, and we can apply our wisdom. Mr. Nick, Rick, Marx, and Professor Queen, all of your wisdom actually valuable if we can apply for human progressions. So I'm a big believer of human wisdom, and I'm taking actions through my wisdom app, and I'm getting very good response from around the world. And in between 6 months, we have our innovative Bangla. We have very exclusive conference. Our prime ministers, our education ministers, our foreign ministers, and everybody going to join, and all of the universities and corporations going to join. So hopefully it will be very unique opportunity for new media like Spot TV, new opportunity for the new leadership, like innovative leadership, what we were discussing. So hopefully it will be new economic paradigm for all of us. Thank you for this opportunity.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Sharif. Kim, do you have any experience outside of the United States when it comes to the criminal and prison system?
So I'll say yes, and I'll say limited. So I have actually presented in Turkey. I've also presented in New Zealand, and about the results of the program specifically. Not only just with residents, but also I have a program that I work specifically with wardens down to correctional officers to be able to change their mindset with regards to how to work with people with respect and dignity. I have one also for people in the kitchen, staff as well as residents, because the kitchen is huge in terms of being able to produce thousands and thousands of meals throughout the day, breakfast, lunch and dinner. So yes, I would say absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, Jatovi has joined us, and he seems to have opinions on everything. So maybe he has an opinion on the U.S. prison system. All I see is that the demographics are large. You have like 2 million people in the United States who are in prison in any given day. So Jatovi, what is your thoughts on the United States prison system? Here in Spain, we don't have near the numbers that you have in the U.S.
Not sure where the discussion was going. I just did get here. In terms of the prison system, I mean, right now we have a pipeline to prison, which has always been there, where our focus is never really on rehabilitation, but and recidivism. So we never really fix those situations. We just allow people to come back out, and we don't provide them any help or any securities to get themselves back onto their feet productively. So they end up back in that same prison system. Similar with the communities that are over policed and overtaxed. They're the ones that end up also in the prison system more so than anyone. But yeah, right now the prison system is the number one, I guess, product in the U.S. because we have the for-profit prisons that have now taken off under this administration. They had been cut back or under prior administrations, and they've always been there, but they had been slowly cut back, but now they're taking off again. They're also being utilized for tied to the immigration system more so now than in prior years. And so, yeah, it's a huge industry. That is one of the top industries in this country. And it's the reason why it probably won't go away until somebody really comes in. And that's why our basic needs around drug use, where individuals trying to get them off rehabilitated that way to get off drugs and so on and so forth. We have more prisons than we have halfway houses. So yeah, our prison system is screwed up. It epitomizes what capitalism is in this country. It is every person has a dollar sign on their head, and that's what our prison system is right now.
Yeah, just
I'd
really
like
quickly.
to add to that the detainment centers that we have are like that now, and you've taken hard-working migrants who actually paid in to our tax system and never got tax refunds because they're not Americans, and now we're paying to detain them in horrible, disgusting situations as well. You're right, Jatovi. We don't even use it as a means to reform anymore. It's just a means to detain and pay the wealthy that are owning these prison systems and detainment centers now. You're absolutely right.
Hey, Kim,
And
just
we
really
also-
quickly, because
we also-
our guest
real quick,
today is
Kim.
actually from your neck of the woods, or one of your neck of the woods, because I know you've got North Carolina roots and everything like that, but she's actually from Texas. So we've got somebody from Texas, and I know Texas can sometimes be very conservative and all along those lines, but yes, definitely Kim has got those Texas roots and everything like that. But Kim, I was wondering your thoughts around one, Texas also, but also your thoughts around the what Jatovi just mentioned, which is this notion that a lot of our prisons are now private prisons and everything like that. So that's probably got to be hard to deal with also when you're doing this kind of training and leadership development, even in the prison system, because it's probably varying depending on whether you're working with a private prison or a more public prison.
Good question, and I want to go back to what Toby said. First of all, I agree with everything he said. One of the things is that I agree with everything except for one thing, and that is the thing I don't agree with is when, and he may not have meant to say it, but he said every, and I don't believe every prison is indicative of the situation across the United States. It goes back to leadership. So if the warden or senior leadership of that particular organization, whether it happens to be a state-run facility or it's a private, then if that person believes in rehabilitation, you better believe it's going to happen at that facility. If they don't, if they're old school and think lock them up, throw away the key, don't care, that's a whole different deal for sure. But I do think, one of the opportunities, and I love what Dr. Sharif said, so many great golden nuggets right there. I was imagining what would it look like in the United States to get the right people around the table with every part of that to really come to work on. We are one of the, we're the most amazing nation. And sometimes we forget how amazing we are when we do have the resources and the knowledge to be able to come together and fix this problem if we really wanted to. Now, it is a business, but that doesn't mean, it wouldn't be great, if we put ourselves out of business. That is not, unfortunately, going to happen. And I took a class probably 30 years ago, and it stuck with me. The professor said this: if we spent the amount of money that we spend taking care of people who are incarcerated and took some of that funds and just put it into a Head Start program, we would start to change the trajectory of what's happening in this country. But we definitely need interventions. If rehabilitation is going to take place, it's got to be really targeted interventions to be able to do that. But there's so much, for me, I see nothing but possibility in when most people might see despair.
So I had worked with a group that dealt with at-risk youth. Worked with them for a very long time. One of the things that the kids that had come through, some had been in prison, some were about to go to prison. their big thing, which I found as actually a generality around the population that's been in and out of, and the reason the recidive rate is so high is because there is no opportunity afterwards.
Mhm.
When you come out, everybody makes you check the box, which is why the battle against the check the box on the application was there. Because if you're already seen as a criminal, it's hard for somebody to unsee you as a criminal. So opportunities were one of the things where these kids felt that were gone because people were always going to see them as a criminal. On top of that, they felt as if they were respected in prison more so than they were respected outside of prison. They could come up with ideas. There was a young man, brilliant kid, had come up with ideas and ways for him to keep his cell warm. He had come up with ways that could be utilized outside of that cell in actual homes. However, he wanted to go back to prison because nobody took him seriously. He didn't, outside, everybody saw him as a criminal. So therefore, that is, the Head Start programs, which actually the investment in education and opportunities and stuff like that, help fight that prison problem. But also we come to a point where we forget the after and don't care about the after. And then even more so, we don't think about the possibility of, or what are those possibilities outside of the Head Start program that are reaching kids at the age of those teenage kids, as well as those early career individuals that end up in prison as well. We don't think about those opportunities because we get set in our ways. Most of our political battles and our even fights on here, we think about a level above where people generally are. When we talk about monetary issues, oh, well, you should just move. Well, that person who's impoverished can't. They're stuck in that situation. So we have to think of opportunities around. Well, these kids should have had parents around. Well, those parents have to work 2 and 3 jobs. So how do we provide opportunity for those kids to keep them active where those parents can feel those kids are safe? And these are things that we don't provide and don't think about because we're always thinking about that bottom dollar and how much that kid is going to cost. So we cut Head Start, we cut education. We instead of in downtown circles, if you go to every downtown in most cities, especially even big cities, there's about one thing for a kid to do, but 50 things for an adult to drink. So you got 50 bars and maybe one museum or one kid's opportunity, a kid zone. So we're not thinking about the opportunities and the ways to provide for kids, for teenagers, and things to give them a pipeline, because we have a pipeline to prison, and we're always putting kids in that pipeline to prison, but we're never providing a pipeline for success or opportunities or tangible things that they can touch and be involved in. The old idiom that people said was an idle mind is the devil's playground. We're doing that on a regular basis.
Yep, that makes sense.
Well,
Hey, just really quickly,
where we run into problems is funding, and the funding isn't prioritized for children in Head Start programs. Or right now we're dealing with a lot of misuse of funding or misuse of appropriated funds. And we need to get that under control. I mean, one of the recent, what I wanted to, hopefully throw into the pot here to talk about is how they're investigating, yet again, Noam, who took $224 million for her vanity ads, which went to an unknown company that was owned by a friend of hers. Her and Corey Ludemowski are now being investigated for taking bribes from corporations, maybe even prison corporations, to do government contracts. And I want to know if they were taking money from these people, where did that money go? Who has it and how is it being spent? But they were apparently taking money from people in order for those people to maintain their government contracts or to initialize new government contracts. So when you're doing things like this in a government position, you're not going to be able to focus on investing in children. And our government really lacks concern of our children's best interests. I mean, they should be investing in better safety measures for our children, and they don't. They should be investing in better education for our children. I travel around the world and I sit down, I'll stay in places for long lengths of time, and I'll sit down with the children and the families, and the children in other countries, all of them at the age of 8 can talk to you on an adult level, talk to you about finances, talk to you about family stability, and discuss, books that I still haven't read, as well as speaking in different languages. We are failing our future investment by allowing the government to misuse our funds and to steal from people.
Kimberly, I'm so glad you brought up really the reading aspect of it. So, we did an extensive study around third grade children. And so if they're not reading at grade level by third grade, then the chances of them completing, definitely high school is super at risk, but maybe not even getting through the 8th grade. And so, there are just so many intervention points. And in my perfect world, which I know doesn't exist, if we would literally go from birth all the way through until, the day that a person dies, and take a look at where are the intervention points where we could really make a difference so that we can reduce the pipeline to prisons, it would be amazing. And some of these things really don't cost a lot of money. And there are organizations out there like the Fortune Society out in New York who is doing what I would say aftercare when someone is released. All the things that are barriers to having a successful life, they're addressing right there and there. So we do have examples here, but they're one-offs. And we have not come together as a group to be able to really be able to have a tipping point, if you will, for good.
And I would
we
like to
need more parents investing time too in their children's education. I mean, when my children were going to school, I would invest time and volunteer to go in and take children to the library, especially children who were from an underprivileged area of town that didn't get a chance to go to the library, children whose parents both worked. And so I would take them to the library, walk them through, help them get books. And we need more involvement. We need more engagement.
Just to tie in, because this is where we get to that plateau that I was speaking about. Many of the individuals that were hoping to get involved don't have the means to get involved, and they're wanting to get involved. And to roll it back to even when we're talking about our monetary priorities, and we keep a lot of times we like to blame just government blanket. It's not just government. Government honestly is a slight reflection of what we prioritize. In the election, at what point was children or education the number one thing that drove somebody to the polls? It wasn't. We never voted, and people put those options out there, but nobody talked about it. Nobody talked about the prison reform gets kicked to the back. One of the things that people did was demonize when we were talking about when people were talking about defund the police, because they took the actual term and said, hey, they just want to get rid of police and so on and so forth. That's not actually what it was about. It was honestly about the reforming of the police system to adding in more social and social necessities. So when police go to these functions, if it's somebody dealing with an episode and maybe they're autistic, they can send a psychiatrist and not a police officer who just got off a murder case to come and deal with the same person, and so you have a problem. So defund the police wasn't about defunding or taking away. It was actually about adding more services so it could help out society. But we took defund the police and ran with it and didn't think about the things that it was supposed to service. It's the same with the education system. Talking about funding and adding more funds into the education system was one of the big things that people fought for. However, then it became demonized, and the intelligence and so on and so forth became the bad thing. How many times do we hear on the campaign trail that this school is elite? We don't need to talk about this school. That person is elite. Well, let's talk about how they got their path. Let's actually talk about how we can get these kids. The Head Start program is getting stripped apart right now. That is something that we need and we should be funding, but it got demonized. HBCUs are losing funding every single, but that is something that helps out a huge community. There are plenty of ways that we could afford it and we can take care of it. But the thing is, we choose to demonize these programs. We choose to run away from these programs because we think, hey, if I get cheaper gas, or if I'm not going to pay for somebody else's education because it's going to cost me here. I don't want to put internet for all because of the fact that, I'm going to have to pay for the internet, even though it could help out a rural community begin to blossom and bring in new technologies to the world based off the individuals coming out of that rural community who now has the opportunity to keep up with where the world is. One of the big fights I'm having is my city is behind the times on a lot of technology. So this is one of those things that we've just got to really begin to change our thinking. War isn't the answer. More so investing into more of the population and trying to figure out ways to educate and keep up with the way the world is. AI is here. AI is
here and everything. Just really quickly, Jacoby, because I didn't want to lose Kim and everything along those lines. How long have you been doing this program with the prisons, and how much pushback have you gotten and everything like that? Because that's part of what we're talking about is the pushback. So I'm sure that the many people in Texas are supporting you, but are you getting any pushback? Because I do know that Texas can be a very conservative state. I'm just being honest about it and everything like that. So how much pushback have you been getting from this program, and how can people learn more about the program, and how can they get in touch with you if they want to have the program in their area?
Sure. So to get in touch with me is they can either go to my website, which is drdrnugentspeaks.com, or certainly in the show notes you can even put my email address. I'm more than happy to receive emails, which is my last name 1234@gmail.com. I will tell you, you are correct. Texas is challenging to work with. Right now, my focus is 100% on Mississippi. I also work in Florida as well. I think it goes back to leadership, just like any organization. So if the leadership is open to the possibility of bringing programming in, innovative programming that's going to make a difference, absolutely easy. When they say, no, we don't need that, that's a whole different topic. But the reason it's so successful is, and the thing I'm proud of is, it's not my program, it's their program. They have made it. We hold them to higher expectations. We have dramatically reduced the number of rule violations, making it safer for staff as well as the residents while they're serving their sentences. And what the research actually says is peer-led mentorship programs can reduce recidivism up to 40%.
That's a huge reduction rate. I've worked in recidivism crime areas like domestic violence, which I think a lot of the children grow up and become offenders in domestic violence because they lack the inspiration and growth tools they need in their education if they've been a victim themselves. So I think you're right. I think that recidivism crimes can be highly reduced by strongly monitoring children. I'll give an example of reducing domestic violence. Okay. One town, small town in our country, reduce the recidivism rates from, very, very high, like 80% to zero. Repeat offenders never repeated domestic violent crimes in their town again. Yes, they were harsh on the offenders, very harsh on repeat offenders, but offenders that were found guilty would have to, show up to the town hall meetings once a month and, talk and draw them into the community. If they were busted repeat offending, the police would basically throw them up against the wall, make them feel what it felt like, to be in fear. But they watched and monitored the offenders more than the offenders would have time to watch and stalk their prey. And I think that working with people one-on-one, not so much instilling fear in them, but spending more time one-on-one with problems and discussing them and then engaging with them and encouraging them to be part of a more positive group would be better than what we're doing now by just throwing kids into prison and having them figure out. Now, there are crimes that do need prison. There are crimes that need it. But most of the children, and like you're saying, you're reducing the recidivism by 40%. That's huge. That's a template that needs to be shared among the world.
Definitely needs to be shared among the world. Just really quickly, have you done any work with Canada? Because we've also got Sasha Starr, who has definitely been following because of his Ukrainian background, the Ukraine-Russia war, but he is from Canada, been living in Canada for a number of years, and I know they have a different kind of judicial system and all along those lines. But I just wondering, Kim, have you done any work in Canada with your program or with prisons up there?
I'm going to say not yet. Not yet.
I don't think Canada is a good place for you because this system in Canada is different from the US, obviously. It's there are no cases spectacular that you can make a movies about some escapes or some kind of torture in prison or anything. This is kind of a very and a lot of people are getting earlier released. They behave well. This is nothing spectacular. Maybe all you can do in Canada, you can organize chess tournaments in prison. They will be very popular. And I don't know what else. I'm following U.S. politics, and yesterday's day was quite spectacular. Trump, being all his life in real estate, he brought real estate type of business in the politics. And the way he negotiated with Iran until the very last minute, it reminds me, if you participated in a real estate transaction, let's say you have a buyer, you have a seller, and this guy wants say extra $500, and this guy doesn't pay. And so they're talking, and real estate agents pushing one guy, then another guy, and it all comes to a high intensity process around 2 past midnight, when both sides are getting weaker, the resolve is getting weaker, the real estate agents on both sides are getting pushier and pushier, and they almost murdered both of them, and the deal is done around 2:30 in the morning. And that's what Trump did yesterday. He said, I will obliterate all Iran. I will push them into Stone Age. And I will do this. And it was very intense, very focused. And he's got results. Let's not talk about ethical part of this process. But as a business is concerned, the business of America is business. That's why they almost 3 times elected a businessman, Trump. It doesn't matter if he's convicted felon and a con artist or so. It doesn't matter. He is about business. That's what America wants to see, somebody who is in business. In some other countries, he would be behind bars for a long time, but not in America. America is a very special place.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, Kim, just really quickly, because we're winding down and everything along those lines, and get ready to end the show and everything like that. But how much have you been able to bring the program to a federal level? Because I do know that there have been efforts to bring it to doing maximums. I'm assuming some of these are federal prisons, but how much have you been able to get support from the federal government, whether that's the president or whether that's the senators or whatever in places like Mississippi, in places like Texas, and other things? So, how much have you been able to get support from the government agencies?
You know, Mark, I'll be honest with you, I haven't even considered, I've been so busy working with the states that I just haven't had the bandwidth to be able to do something like that. But definitely, I definitely would consider reaching out. The one thing I do say is that, you know, if the audience is listening, particularly in the United States, there's a place for everybody to be able to make a difference. It could be writing a letter around programming. It could be becoming a second chance employer. It could be considering a housing unit that's maybe in the past, because they were checking a box, maybe they would at least allow the opportunity for someone who has gotten out and wants to live in a safe new community and they can afford the rent, be open to that. I mean, there's tons of opportunities to be able to do that. I like that Kimberly said, I mean, we could even go back into, you know, the grade schools and do reading to children, or take them to a library, or, you know, volunteering. I mean, there is a place for everybody, and it doesn't mean you have to be inside prison to be able to make a difference in your community.
You know, I wanted to share something with you. A friend of mine, Elliot Ness, who is a chess champion, and who actually started doing something similar, where he was taking chess into and teaching young people, and then they started doing it with adults in the prisons, and they learned that this really curved their minds a lot, and kind of I'm not going to say controlled it, but they were reducing their need to do crimes by teaching them chess. He also reaches out and teaches chess to children, and we did an NFL Super Bowl chess program one year, because a lot of the Super Bowl players play chess. So, well, NFL players. So, so maybe that could be something that you can add. We can see if Elliot would be interested in speaking with you. But he took and suitcased this in to the prisons, and they were doing really good with teaching prisoners to play chess. I mean, it's better than beating each other up, right?
One of the other ones is video games. Honestly, that's a huge one, because that speaks to a lot of kids now. Chess is different for the younger generation. But yeah, the younger generation will jump into the video game situation. Hence the reason that's one of the pieces that I'm putting together later down the road that I've got going on.
Yeah, I mean, video games are good too. Chess, anything that challenges the mind, right?
Yeah,
I think we're at
no
the
doubt
top
about
of
it.
the hour mark.
Yep, no doubt about it. The top of the hour. So, Kim, if you just want to tell folks once again how they can reach you and everything like that. This has been an enlightening conversation about how they can make some changes. But if you want to tell folks once again how they can reach you, and we'll be back with another World Edition on tomorrow. But definitely we have other programming later on today, including Weed Wednesday and everything like that. But if you can tell folks how they can reach you, because I do know that that's a industry that Jeff Eichen does a lot and talks about, because he's definitely trying to get people out of the what some people would call a victimless crime and everything like that. So he's been very much involved in that work out of California. But if you just share how you can be reached and everything like that.
Sure. And my website is Dr. Dr. Nugent, Nugent, speaks.com. I'm on LinkedIn as well. My email address is my last name, 1234@gmail. And my book, the latest book, From Prison to Possibilities, is on Amazon if they want to check out the content. But thank you so much.
No problem. We appreciate you being on and learning about the program and everything like that. And we definitely hope to maybe even have you back at another time as well. But I think folks learned a lot about what you've got going on and your thoughts and everything like that. So hopefully you'll be reached out to and all along those lines. But on that note, we're ready to get out of here. We've got other programming coming up as well. But I appreciate you sharing your insights.
Thank you so much.
No problem.